My name's Tim, believer in Jesus Christ, in recovery for drugs and alcohol, and this is on Amends. So the principle 6 is evaluate all my relationships, offer forgiveness to those who have hurt me, and make amends for harm I've done to others, except when to do so would injure them or others. Happy are the merciful. Happy are the peacemakers, Matthew 5:9. Step 8, we made a list of all persons we had harmed and became willing to make amends to them all. Do to others as you would have them do to you. So it has been my experience in sponsoring people. Most people that, kind of relapse on the third and fourth step and the fifth step, it's been my experience that that's not a relapse, that's a lapse. A relapse is when you've been sober for a while and you've been working the program. But a lot of times they don't have a good base. They do a thorough 1, 2, and 3. They get to the fourth step and they're gone. And it's been my experience, most people that I have sponsored trip up on the 8th and 9th step. It's a real big stumbling block for a lot of people when it comes, because it's really, if you think about the steps, we go 1 through 7, that's where the rubber meets the road. When we have to go out and make amends, we have to talk to the people that we have harmed. We have to forgive the people that have harmed us. That's tough. That can be really tough. And I've always heard it said it's a lot of work, man. You got to work at it. If I think about the work that is actually a couple pages for one, a couple pages here, number of pages for step 4 and all that. All the time and energy I put into my recovery, my getting loaded and doing the things I was doing, I put a lot more energy into that than I ever did in my recovery. But it's difficult. What little bit of work there is that we do, it's intense. It's really intense to go make amends to somebody you stole from. Pay them back. Make that hard-earned dollar, and you got to go, man, I'm sorry, I apologize for that. Maybe making amends to somebody that you were physical with. Maybe forgiving somebody that abused you. The amount of work that little bit of work, that was super intense. And that's what I ran from. I ran from that intensity. I didn't want to face all that stuff. It's okay, it's back there. I'll be all right. But yet I was acting out. I was being angry. I was being facetious. Any number of character defects, prideful, greed, lustful. Because I didn't deal with my behavior of my past. So we get into step 8. Forgive me as I learn to forgive. Sums up pretty well. What really helped me out, because when we get into step 8, we're really looking back a little bit at step 6 and 7, right? We're looking back at a little bit of step 4, because that list. A lot of the people I had resentments against, I owed an amends to, too. And there's people on that list that I didn't owe an amends to, but I had to forgive them. People from my childhood. And then we're looking at 6 and 7. We're looking at our character defects. When I harmed somebody, when I stole their money, what character defect is that? When I got in a fist fight with them, what character defect is that? So what really came into play for me on 6 and 7, it's very important recovery books that we need to have. One of the most important books that I had was the dictionary, because I was a little bit slow I know about you guys, but I was slow when I got here. Now, what does that word mean? What does lust mean? What does it really mean? Wrath. Pride. You really look at it. My sponsor had me go to the dictionary, look up the 7 deadly sins. We call them sins in here, missing the mark. and had me go to the dictionary and write a definition. He had me go to, well, this is before cell phones. So he had me go, or, Google. He had me go to the library. You ever see the Cambridge dictionaries in the library? They're on the podium, those big dictionaries. They had me copy down the definition of each one of those. The 7 deadly sins. We added in self-centered fear and lack of self-discipline. And I had definitions for each one of them. My sponsor had me read them out loud in prayer and meditation 3 times a day. I had them in that plastic, plastic protector. And I can remember going to work, the trade that I worked in, I'm a painter by trade, and going over in the corner during lunch and reading your character defects. All of them were getting loaded. And you're like, what the heck is Tim doing? I'd be in the corner. It was really good. And God showed up. I was afraid of my sponsor. You remember my sponsor, Angelo. He was 6'2" or so, about 300 pounds, ex-Navy SEAL. And I didn't want to deal with him. He told me too when we first sponsored me. He goes, "I'll beat you up if I have to. I'll take you out in the driveway." So I did it. I did that. But God was working in my life, because when I got angry at somebody at work, that definition of wrath or anger popped up in my head. And I was praying. I was actually developing a relationship with God. I was praying. God, help me with my anger. I was just hanging out talking to him while I'm driving the forklift. I wanted to kill this guy. I almost killed him. I would have killed him. And I didn't. I have to tell a story. So about 10 years later, the same guy I was going to kill at work, I was going to knock over an I-beam on him. And and he wasn't a good guy, though, either. He was pushing everybody's buttons at work. And about 10 years later, I started my own business, painting business, and I opened up a shop down the street from the ironworker shop that I was working at when I first got sober. I was at New Life Center. And I needed a forklift to move something inside my shop. I'm going to go down to Dietrich's, see if they'll lend me their forklift. So I went down there. I'm looking down through the big garage door, down the thing, and I was like, oh, there's somebody. And I go walking down there, and it's Carlos. I'm like, oh, no. I said, hey, can you mind if I borrow the forklift for 1 second? I got a shop down the street. And he's looking at me funny. And all of a sudden he goes, Tim, look at you. And he gave me a big hug. I'm like, holy moly, this is the same guy I was going to kill. And it turned out he had become a Christian. And he helped me. He drove the forklift down there and moved this stuff for me. And we would have lunch together once in a while. But that was very important for me to get an idea of what step 8 was all about, because when I'm making amends to somebody, what character defects popped up? I'm going to want to know that. Step 8, became willing. That's what became willing is. Because I don't want to just say I became willing and go, I hate to use the word, but it's the best word, willy-nilly, up to somebody and start making amends with them, and end up having to owe another amends after that. Oh, and also, too, we need to remember people that we need to forgive. I know there's people in here that have been hurt really bad, as adults or as kids. I'm one of them. And that was something that was so cool about Celebrate Recovery, because it puts more of an emphasis on that than they do at outside meetings, NA or AA, that kind of thing. I would learn how to forgive those people. In these cases, we were wrong against the individual. It was often child molestation, sexual abuse, adultery. Such sins are deep violations and leave painful wounds. But they are also a root of dysfunction that bring many people into recovery. And that's what I'm getting at. We develop behaviors, coping mechanisms as we get through life. And we get older, and we're using that out in an adult world. And it doesn't work. It's dysfunctional. Forgiving the perpetrator for such wrongs, even after the one harmed us has dealt with the emotional pain seeming impossible. We're going to deal specifically with this issue in the lesson on the 3 types of forgiveness. Made a list of all persons we had harmed. We already talked about it. We're going to take a list from our four-step. And, there's quite a number of people, too, on my 8-step list that weren't on my 4-step list. I just know I needed to make amends to them, like stealing things from people. And so we're going to go into the acrostic. Amends. A is admit the hurt and the harm. M is make a list. E is encourage one another. N is not for them. D is do it at the right time and start living the promises of recovery. Everybody knows that, right? Everybody ever go to AA meetings or anything like that? We got the promises at the end of the meeting. That's what it's talking about. It's talking about what starts happening to us as we start to work steps 8 and 9. The A in amends is admit the hurt and the harm. If you're a note taker and you got that little half sheet. Tina? No, that's the big sheet. There's a half sheet around there too. Admit the hurt and the harm. Your feelings have been bottled up for far too long, and that has interfered with all your important relationships. In this step of your recovery, you need once again to face the hurts, resentment, and wrongs others have caused you, or that you have caused others. Holding on to resentment only blocks your recovery. It blocks God's forgiveness in your life. Luke 6:37 tells us, do not judge others, and God will not judge you. Do not condemn others, and God will not condemn you. Forgive others, and God will forgive you. That sounds like a song, doesn't it? We'll make a song out of that one. A blues song. All right, the next letter in amends is M, make a list. And this is the list I'm talking about. I'll put this down for a second. Let me see. There it is. There's another sheet. There's a full sheet on your chair or around there somewhere. It says 8-step amends. This is what my sponsor had me do. He had me do this form. And you're making your list. Let's say you have like Shannon on your list. Shannon. We'll say Shannon, so keep it anonymous. To whom do I owe an amends? People, places, things, situations. You do one of these sheets for each person or place or thing. Why I say people, places, things, situations. What about the cops? Anybody cause the cops to have a bad day? More than once? In fact, I wouldn't be alive today if it wasn't for the cops. Big amends. Institutions. The Hooskow. Anybody know what the Hooskow is? You never heard that word? The Hooskow. The slammer. I remember I lived at a clean and sober house, and I was smoking pot, of course, in a clean and sober house, and doing all other kinds of stuff. Eventually, I came home all whacked out one day, and by the grace of God, the house manager, really neat guy, and he talked to me. He said, "Tim, do you want to get sober?" I said, "Yes." And he said, "Okay, you wait here." And he called New Life Center. I didn't know about New Life Center yet. And he said, came back, he goes, "Okay, you have to stay here 3 days. You're under house arrest. If you leave, you're gone. If you stay, I'll get you into New Life." And he got me into New Life. So fast forward, I stayed sober. I had about 3 years sober, not quite. I had moved out of New Life. I moved out in SLE. I had my own room in the house. I had my own going on. My sponsor had me go back to that clean and sober house and be the manager. Anybody ever live in a... Yeah. Hey, amen. Yeah. Best place to be. Yeah. And so I had to be the manager. I was the manager for about a year. And it was tough, man. I'd smell crack in the middle of the night, stuff like that. I'd have to go kick people out. And it was gnarly, man. But that was making amends with an institution. But I had to do an A step first. What harms did I do? You know, how many people was I taking out with me when I was smoking pot in there, doing whatever? How did I harm them? I was smoking pot in the bathroom. You know, I was hiding booze. How did I harm them? I could say my ex-wife. You want to go there? I lied, I cheated, and I stole. Those are the things I put down on my list, how I harmed them. Why did I harm them? That's where we get into the nuts and bolts of 6 and 7. Character defects. 7 deadly sins are definitions. Pride, lust, greed. I had to put those down there. It started making sense. You know, because we've heard, often we hear in here, drinking or whatever it is, codependency, eating, whatever you're here for is a symptom. That's the symptom of a deeper problem. The deeper problem is my pride was out of control. My lust, my greed was out of control, and it was harming people. It was harming my wife. It started making sense. It's almost like a math problem. And then what do I need to do to make amends? What I did with my sponsors, we made like bullet points on some of it, like how much money did I use that I shouldn't have used? Come up with a number, add some to it. What am I going to say? I wrote it like a paragraph of what I'm going to say, just so I kind of had it in my heart. I wasn't going to read it verbatim, but I had it in my heart. What am I going to say? I want to make amends. I don't want to go over onto her side of the street. I want to stay on my side of the street. And it was awesome when I actually did my 9th step. I'll tell that story. So I was living at a clean, sober house. I had about a year sober, and my sponsor, I was like, you know, when am I going to do this? That kind of thing. And I got a call from a priest who was a priest, helped out with my wife was seeking an annulment of the marriage, my ex-wife at that point. And so they gave me a priest, kind of like an advocate, to help me out. Do I want to get an annulment? That kind of thing. Did I want to argue it? And she had her priest that was her advocate, kind of like a lawyer. And no, I just told him I owned everything. Told him what happened. He goes, well, it sounds like you guys should have never been married. So I got his number, called my sponsor, told him what happened. He goes, you call that guy back and you ask him if he could contact her advocate and see if I could make direct amends with her. And I did that. Called him back, told him that, and I don't know, about a week later, I got a phone call, and it was my ex-wife. And at that point, I hadn't talked to her in like 3 years. Almost fell out of my bed. And I went up to, she lived in Tracy at the time. Everybody know where Tracy is? I'm sorry. And so I drove up to Tracy, and, you know, I had a lot to own, man. It was gnarly. I was a depraved human being. I had a lot to own. So I, you know, went up there. I had kind of had a little, you know, show her what I was doing a little bit in my binder. We made amends. I had a list in my head of the harms and how I was going to make amends. I had money in my wallet. I gave her quite a bit of money. And she pulled out of her pocket a little piece of spiral notepad. She was working with a sponsor too. She had the harm she did to me. And we made amends. And we hugged and we prayed. And I left. It was awesome. It was unbelievable. And I'll get to what happened after that as the lesson goes on. So anyway, so in here, Jen helped me out with this too. For those of us that have been harmed by people, Roman numeral number 3 doesn't apply. But the first two do. You know, whom harmed me? How did they harm me? And at the bottom, make a list of how they harmed you. How, you know, what do I need to forgive that person of? Go over it with your sponsor. E, encouragement. Encourage one another. Hey, you know, if you're somebody's accountability partner, you know, their recovery buddy, whatever you want to call it, Help each other out, man. Hey, how you doing with that? How's your A-step going? Because next thing you know, you're not going to have a recovery buddy. They're going to get stuck and they're going to go out. Hebrews 10:24 says, "Let us consider how we may spur one another on towards love and good deeds." If you're asked to be an encourager, an accountability partner, a sponsor, be honored. And remember that you can't hold the torch to light another's path without brightening your own. So make sure your own house is in order. The N in amends. Not for them, if you're filling out that paper. You need to approach those to whom you are offering your forgiveness or amends humbly, honestly, sincerely, and willingly. Do not offer excuses or attempt to justify your actions. Focus on only your part. That's where the sponsor comes in before. Do not expect anything back. Oh, that was okay. That's okay, bud. That's all right. You stole 15 grand from me. It's all right. I lost my home. Don't expect that. There's certain situations that you probably shouldn't go and do an amends. I know that's why I'm telling you, do an ASAP. Fill all this stuff out. Or do your own form. I don't care. Do something where you can show to your sponsor and saying, hey, let's go over this. I still need to make amends with that person. I may need to go do volunteer work at the homeless shelter. I may need to go back to that clean and sober house and be a manager. That kind of thing. I'm not going to go make amends to my old dealer. Probably not a good idea. I know one guy that did something really bad to somebody, super bad. And he was kind of just not doing his steps with his sponsor, kind of doing his own program, And saw this person in a hardware store and made amends with him, and he ended up going to prison. He went to prison, and he had been married again, and he had 3 kids. And now he's in prison. And and for part of me, not for them, I kind of, maybe it's a codependent thing. I hope they find healing. I hope my wife found healing. Ex-wife found healing. I really do, and I think she did. I pray for that. I pray for that to happen for them too. So, I don't know, is that codependent? Maybe. All right, do you know that you can become addicted to bitterness, hatred, and revenge, just as you can become addicted to alcohol, drugs, and relationships? A life characterized by bitterness, resentment, anger will kill you emotionally, shrivel your soul, and will produce the 3 Ds: depression, despair, and discouragement. An unforgiving heart will also cause you more pain and destruction than it will ever cause the person you hurt. Excuse me, let me read that again. An unforgivable heart will cause you more pain and destruction than it will ever cause the person who hurt you. That was a big one for me. Having stuff happen to me as a little kid at school with a teacher, just like the kind of stuff you read about in books. Gnarly stuff. I had to forgive that person. I had to. It wasn't easy. There was a period of time when I knew he was still around in that school. You know how they say, I might not have murdered somebody, but if I thought about it, then I murdered somebody? I wanted to murder that guy. I wanted to kill him. I had to forgive him. When I got into recovery, I had to let that go, man. I had to forgive him. Let's move on to the D in amends. Do it at the right time. Kind of like with my ex-wife. I had to do it at the right time. When God called, I got a phone call from God. That's what I call it. I get a phone call from a priest. Who gets a phone call from a priest? I had moved so many times. I was running around Northern California with my matching luggage. You know, my 3 hefty bags with garbage in them. I don't know how the guy found me. I don't know how it happened. Another good reason, along the same lines, a recovery story about that amends with my ex-wife. When I was at New Life Center, I got the divorce papers. I remember my sponsor saying, when you get them, you don't open them. Bring them to my house. And because I was afraid of my sponsor, I listened to him. So I got the envelope, and I didn't open it. I brought it to my sponsor's house. He didn't open it either. He took it and he put it up on the shelf. And I had a meeting with there's a guy anybody know where Roxas is, the men's meeting? He went to that meeting. He was a priest. He's a Jesuit priest. He was in his 80s. He looked like Yoda. And he had a resentment against the Pope. And there was a picture in the Pope at Roxas, a painting of the Pope. And he had a resentment against him, so his sponsor made him sit underneath the picture so he couldn't see it. That's not funny. That's funnier than heck. So my sponsor made a meeting with him. We went over to his office in San Jose and walked into the office. He had a table set up with candles lit, and he had a crucifix with Jesus taken off the crucifix and put aside over here. It was kind of like a word picture. And we sat down with him. We opened up that envelope, and it said, disillusion of marriage. That hit me hard, man. Now I know why my sponsor had me not open it. Disillusion. Like it never happened. Read through it. Signed them. And along the lines, I'm sure a lot of you have heard this saying, along the lines, the priest didn't say much. He said, get off the cross, we need the wood. He didn't say that. But he implied it with what the word picture was. And he just talked about forgiveness, that God forgives us. It was just such an awesome time. So grateful for my sponsorship. I just encourage you to hang out with your sponsor. All right, we got that. And then we're going to go, except when to do so, would injure them or others. We already talked about that. Philippians 2:4. Each of you should look not only to your own interests, but also to the interests of others. And don't wait to do your A step. You don't have to wait to do that. You don't have to wait for the right timing. You get your A step done, then you bring it to your sponsor, and then you can go over when and how and what we can do. The last letter is S. Start living the promises of recovery. I love the promises. They're awesome. And I love what God says about it. I will repay you for the years the locusts have eaten away. Have any of you felt like that? The locusts have just eaten stuff away? Yeah. God will repay us for that. And along those lines, with my ex-wife, Colleen, I was in Tracy. We made the amends. We held hands. We prayed. I got in my truck, and I started driving back. That was the first real big amends I did. I'm driving back over 17. I'm like, what's supposed to happen? I'm like, what's supposed to happen? You always hear about these amends in the meetings. You're like, where's the lightning bolt? I just like looking. And then I finally realized what it was. There's weights lifted off my shoulders. I felt lighter. I felt like, oh, okay. I get it. I've been walking around with this stuff for how many years? And I just had some stuff lifted. I made amends. Step 8 offers us freedom. Freedom from chains of resentment, anger, hurt, freedom through your amends for the harm you caused others, to look them in the eye, knowing that you are working with God and cleaning up your side of the street. And I would encourage you in your small groups, anybody who's done step 8, and step 9, if you've done that, to share about it in your group. It's awesome. Let's pray. Thank you, Lord, so much for this awesome time, Lord. Thank you for the steps. Thank you for step 8 and 9, Lord. I just ask that you're with each and every one of us. And when we get to this step, that you give us the courage to move forward. You give us the energy to move forward and to get through this step and live the promises that you've set before us. Thank you, Jesus. Amen.
Santa Cruz Celebrate Recovery meets every Friday night at 7 p.m. We're located at Christian Life Center, 1009 Mission Street in Santa Cruz, California. If you live near Santa Cruz or just visiting the area, we warmly invite you to attend. To learn more, you could visit our page on Christian Life Center's website at clcsantacruz.org/celebrate-recovery. We hope this video has been encouraging to you, and thank you for watching.